Before you begin building your end walls, make sure you have a plan for where all the elements in your kit will go. Understand how vents, fans, doors, and heaters interact and are best positioned before you start building. Please see the End Wall Design Guidelines section of our written installation manual for more tips and tricks. Once you have a plan mapped out, the first step is to install end wall ground posts. Install temporary Tex screws into the outside of the ground posts on both sides of the end bows, about 6 inches from the ground. Stretch mason twine between these screws to define the outside face of your end wall framing. Ensure the twine runs along the outside of the bows so all new posts will align in the same plane. Measure the distance between the 2 ground posts and position your vertical members. These will typically be placed on either side of your door frame. If you're installing standard double doors, we would recommend cutting your door header first. Place it on the ground where your door opening will be, centering it using your tape measure. Then, install your end wall ground posts on either side of the header, leaving enough space for the vertical square tube to fit between the header and the posts. When you later install this header, you will have already ensured that the top and bottom of your door opening are the same size. Drive end wall ground posts at each marked location, leaving only 8 to 12 inches above ground. Use the same method you used to plumb and drive the initial ground posts. The vertical square tube will fit over these posts. If the tops of the posts deform while driving, you may need to trim off about 1 inch to allow the square tube to fit over them. If you've purchased a high wind kit, install the additional end wall ground posts and steel pieces. Place these extra verticals on either side of the first 2, halfway between each door jamb and the bow. Attach brace bands to the end bow arch above each end wall ground post. You may be able to spread these by hand, or you might need to use a hammer. Loosely attach each brace band to a brace end bracket using a bolt and nut. At each ground post, slide a piece of 1.75-inch square tube over the top and hold it plumb using a level. Slide the brace band with the end wall bracket to meet the face of the vertical tube, facing away from the peak of the greenhouse. Mark where to cut the tube, just before the indentation on the bracket. Cut the tube to this length and place it back over the ground post. Ensure it's plumb, then secure it to the end wall bracket with Tex screws. Tighten the nut on the brace band. Once the vertical members are secured to the bow above, attach them to the ground post with 2 Tex screws. Install your first horizontal piece of square tube between the 2 uprights. This will often be your door header. Connect horizontal and vertical pieces using angle brackets and Tex screws. Always install angle brackets with the holes opposite and opposing. If one bracket has 2 holes on the vertical, the other should have 2 holes on the horizontal. Continue adding horizontal members according to your design. For horizontal pieces that meet the bow on a curve, use a brace end bracket and band sleeved into your square tube. Add additional vertical members between the horizontals as needed, ensuring everything is level and plumb. If you're covering the end wall with polycarbonate, it's best to add these secondary verticals after installing the polycarbonate and double H. Then secure every joint with 2 brace end brackets. Dig a trench 4 to 6 inches deep along the wall to bury the bottom edge of the end wall covering, except in doorways. This trench is necessary for both soft poly and polycarbonate coverings. If you're using soft poly covering on the end wall, install pieces of single wire lock base on the outside face of each vertical and horizontal member. Secure these with Tex screws every 12 to 18 inches. At 90-degree junctions, butt one piece against the other. When the wire lock base approaches the bow pipe, cut it 6 to 8 inches short and flatten the end before installing. This prevents sharp edges from cutting the soft poly. If using shutter vents, insert them into their rough opening from inside the greenhouse. Secure them with Tex screws. The vent is installed correctly if pulling down on the central shaft from inside the greenhouse opens the shutters.